Okay, in this video we're basically going to look at why asymmetric information is inefficient and how the government can intervene to ensure, not the government, how the private market can intervene to try and avoid some of the problems with asymmetric information. So first of all, just an example. This is asking you to use an example, explain why the existence of asymmetric information leads to inefficiency. So within this question you should be looking at this and going, righto, I need to define asymmetric information, I need to explain why it's a market failure, and I need to sort of analyse in my answers what are some of the inefficiencies that can be caused by this. Whether that you can take the moral hazard approach, and talk about something where the buyer has more information than the seller, or you can take the approach of something like the used car, where there's both an over and under allocation of resources in the market. So first of all, you've got the first paragraph, which is your definition. Asymmetric information occurs when one party to a transaction has more information about the characteristics of a product than another consumer. The market failure can occur when a business, so in this case we're looking at the business having more information, entices consumers into purchasing things based on false claims that can be misleading or deceptive. So because they have more information about the product, that means the consumer they can make false claims about the quality or the price, which basically distorts consumers' decision makings. So the idea is that fake information leads them to make inefficient or misinformed choices. So there we've basically defined it, we've provided an example, and then we've discussed how this inefficiency can lead to the consumer making choices that don't maximise their living standard. So in this case, the market is failing to protect consumers from purchasing products that they would not ordinarily purchase, which leads to an over-allocation of resources to the production of products based on the false information. So this example doesn't use specific examples of industries, but I encourage you to do that. And it's also important to recognise that in the long run, it can actually result in an under-allocation of resources to the production of certain products because consumers fear being ripped off. I think it would be a lot easier to set out this answer if you talked about the car sales. So in this example, you could talk about being sold a lemon car and then go into detail about how that will lead to less consumption of plum cars, and that mutually beneficial transaction won't take place because people are cautious. Another example, the relationship between asymmetric information, adverse selection, moral hazard, and then why it leads to inefficiency. So again, explain what adverse selection is. For example, in the market for used cars, the purchaser's inability to determine the full worth of the car may mean that the seller cannot extract the true value of the car. This has become some sellers with lemons that are not worth the selling price. So basically, because they can't determine the full worth, sellers often can't get the true value of their cars because people are skeptical about the lemon cars in the past. As a result, there will be very few good second-hand cars made available because they can't get the price they deserve. This is an inefficient allocation of resources, as those with second-hand cars may choose to hold on to them when it may have been better for a transaction to take place. So really focusing on the impact that it has on people that are trying to sell good second-hand cars. It can also lead to moral hazard because a person might change their behaviour when their actions can't be observed. Make sure you clearly define what moral hazard is, and then provide an example. So when we get insurance, we might be less careful about the way we drive, they may take more risks, and therefore more resources will be allocated towards repairs and so on and so forth. And you could go on then to talk about how this can also lead to adverse selection because healthy people or safe drivers may not purchase car insurance as the premiums increase. Okay, in terms of private solutions to asymmetric information, we've got signalling and screening. The difference here is when we're talking about signalling, we're talking about information that the employer gets the employee to provide. So like they might get you to provide a reference or a referee, they might tell you to tell us their place of education or their previous experience. So basically all of this stuff, this signalling stuff, is all the stuff in your resume. Screening is all about making sure they are getting the right candidate. So it's about looking at the details, like if there's any mistakes in someone's reference, looking at psychological tests, trial procedures, perhaps using cameras to make sure that they're doing what they should be doing. So the key difference between signalling and screening is one that signalling is about the employer providing the information to the prospective employer, where screening is about you sort of checking through all the employees' details and monitoring them in their behaviour. Both trying to make sure that they're not doing anything that you can't observe. You may also use private organisations. So reviews on the internet are really important for reducing asymmetric information because you find out more about the product. It's like reviews like Choice and RACV. So there are other products on the internet like iSelect for insurance or Trivago, where you can compare hotels to try and give you more information about the types of products available in the market. Another example of what the private market can do is removing unfair dismissal laws. that idea of that, and it's probably, I should have actually put this in the government section, but if we remove unfair dismissal laws, it's a way to promote reduced asymmetric information because it's easy for workers to get sacked. So therefore, essentially, the government is making it less likely that people will act in a sort of moral hazard or they won't do their job as well as they should because they know that they can easily get sacked. So that is a form of government intervention, but it is a way to reduce asymmetric information. So, for example, with the principal and agent problem, the example is that in an employment contract, the worker doesn't work to their potential because they're getting a certain wage. This is inefficient because it's not maximising technical efficiency. They're not producing as much as they should be. It could lead to higher prices, which hurts allocative efficiency. And in order to solve this without government intervention, we could use signalling and look at the person's past experience, etc., and referees, or Facebook mutual friends, or we could use screening where the employee actually finds out more information about the employer by monitoring them through tests, etc., or cameras, and so on and so forth. You could also use performance-based pay to try and stop them from slacking off on the job. Another thing we can use is independent reviews, which I talked about before. So private organisations and associations can provide useful information to consumers. Independent reviews by things like Choice and the RACV. So the internet is often a really common question. Internet is a good way to try and reduce the amount of asymmetric information in a market. You can compare restaurants. There's so much information you can find about the quality of products on the internet. Insurance companies also protect themselves against moral hazard. They do this by making people pay in excess. So they try and, that's like an amount you have to pay if you get into a car accident. So people will stop acting in a risky way or to prevent moral hazard. They will also do things like get them to provide information on how many crashes they've been in, whether they have demerit points, and so on and so forth, so they can find out information about the level of risk, and then they can charge them accordingly. So you get charged more for insurance if you've been in previous accidents. Those who choose a cheaper package with a higher excess in the event of claim often signal their low-risk drivers. So those that are willing to pay for less for insurance but pay more if they have a claim signal to the insurance companies that they are less risk providers. Thank you.